I would like to welcome everybody to the follow-up interview to the Alex Lightman report number 4 and talk a little bit about what he discussed in that report. Alex, I thought it was very interesting because you mentioned a lot of the influences of the newest blockchain technologies in the existing economic reality. And I would say the speeding up of developments due to COVID-19 and everything that we talked about over the last weeks. When you spoke about breaking up the existing asset classes, I mean, that is quite, I would say, something we haven't seen new asset classes in many, many years in the existing economy. What do you think, what will happen first in this area, do you think?
Well, I think that there's going to be quite a lot of shift in derivatives. So derivatives, we look at the big numbers. There's a joke going around now. I made it myself, but of course other people have done it. Everett Dirksen said, a billion here, a billion there. Pretty soon you're talking about real money. And now people are casually, housewives, taxi drivers, coal miners are talking about trillion here, trillion there. First thing, then you're talking about real money. The global GDP last year was something around $80 trillion. It could be 10 to 20% lower this year, but let's say it's around 80 trillion. And the total value of all the assets before COVID-19 was about 380 trillion. Now, they're in the derivatives market, that's in the quadrillions. So you have, millions times a million times 1,000 is a billion times 1,000 is a trillion, trillion times 1,000 is a quadrillion. So you're talking about a market that's, it's just blips in computers, but it's pretty huge. And I can't imagine that this market won't experience massive shifts. And I think that some of these shifts are going to happen when the public is able to transact with tokenized, permissionless blockchain solutions. I also think we're going to see a lot of different new asset classes as you can make new things with the blockchain, because the software is mostly open source. There's a community of people, and I have seen a number of people who were from traditional banking. So I know a person who's worked for the largest commercial bank in the United States, and which grew, which is now more than all the European banks put together. And he left traditional banking after decades of being the leading person in the world in one sector, and he's now focused on blockchain and crypto. So as these people come into crypto, I think they're going to bring some ideas, but they're going to go, oh, wait, I'm like a painter who, instead of using using oils that are very expensive to try everything, using watercolors. And if you have been painting in, one tiny tube and painting in oils can be $100. But if you're using watercolors, they're practically free. And in fact, you can even use house paints. So my girlfriend, when she's painting, just goes to Lowe's and buys house paints. All of a sudden you have this new palette to create new kinds of products. And we'll talk about other kinds of specifics, but I think that that's the general picture, is that this is the year when people have to invent something new. There's just no way to keep the existing infrastructure of all these banks and brokerages and there with their big fat fees, especially when there's a saying in America, how are you going to keep them down on the farm when they've seen Gay Paris? Meaning if they see something amazing. And the thing that's got to hit everybody in traditional finance is somebody wiring $1.2 billion and paying a $70 fee. I mean, we have the ability in crypto to do instant transactions that are virtually free. And what's the financial industry doing if they're just serving as intermediaries between people buying, selling, borrowing, loaning, and swapping? And our fees are 1, 2, or 3 orders of magnitude lower than theirs.
If you go there, Eric, and you look at platform ideas of Metaverse DNA, are you looking at creating any new asset classes that we haven't seen before? Maybe even this year, if you care to elaborate on that?
Well, it's not up to me to create new asset class. I think the people out there will be creating new asset class. I actually echo what Alex just said. There will be a lot of new asset class to be created in a very short time after the COVID-19. There are a lot of things, a lot of fundamental things has changed. I actually see a lot of things going on, and these things can be put on a permissionless chain like DNA later on. Just give you an example. A group of friends in Toronto, they are doing something called a GIF, GIF, which is animation. Animation. It's like it's an artistry work. They're artists, right? So they've been given a new tool, which is internet or say a computer, so you can have a new art, and this art are online. But you know that the problem with things online that you can copy and paste, but with blockchain, the GIF they just created has a unique blockchain ID, which is an asset class, a new asset class. Interestingly, there are some auction sites for this GIF file art. And one of my friends just recently sold his piece for $600.
Wow.
Yes, 3 ethers, 3 ethers. And he's kind enough to teach my daughter how to do this. I said, okay, now she has another career choice on the blockchain. So a lot of new things happening.
What you're actually saying is that we're opening up asset classes like previously maybe we opened Facebook or YouTube to anybody post anything that they would like, but just in a completely different realm, which is basically asset classes, which, you know, we've seen some attempts to do that with content, but to do it specifically with art. I think one of the future reports, Alex, should be about a tremendously interesting asset class that is called tokenizing existing assets. You know, like art, like real estate, like all these things, because previously in blockchain, we saw a lot of developments into, I would say, new type of things, you know, financing projects, creating new things. But there's an enormous capacity in the market to tokenize existing assets and create asset classes. And that's really a remarkable thing. We see some very tiny developments like STOs and other things we're finding our way, but it's not just the traditional STO replacing the IPO. I think it's all types of asset classes, like it's art, it's whatever you can think of that can be a new asset. And anybody can create them on a permissionless blockchain. That's the beauty of it, I think.
Just add on to it. So I heard people saying that a blockchain is a tool for people to digitize their assets. So a lot of time I try to correct them. I say blockchain not only are capable of digitized assets. There's just another class we call digital asset. Asset digitization and digital asset are actually two things. So when you digitize assets, you're actually digitize current existing physical assets.
Yes.
But there are assets native to internet or native to blockchain that is actually created on chain or say on the internet, like the digital art we just mentioned, right? And when we have a avatar, we have a digital identity that actually prove that we are the rightful owner of that piece of art. Then you can start to auction. Then you have value. Same thing as let me say the property rights, like so digital property rights, right? Things like that.
I think you had just had a perfect subject for one of the future Lightman reports. What's actually the difference between creating digital assets or digitize existing assets, which is an extremely interesting subject, because I think digitizing existing assets, because of the way we're transforming our banking, financial institutions, the way that we transact with each other, is going to have a massive influence on everything that's towards the future is changing, and it's doing it at a rapid pace at the moment. If we, you know, Alex, if one of the topics that you raised in your report is pseudonymity, you know, already Eric sort of referred to digital identity, that whole area of pseudonymity, digital identity. You said, you know, the more tools, the cheaper, and the more people will use them. But of course, that area of pseudonymity is extremely important to have a permissionless, trustless blockchain. So how do you see that whole area function?
Well, we can divide that into two classes. One is the things that are illegal, so people wanting to evade taxes. And then there's the whole nature of corporate identity and institutional identity. And there's personal identity. So Ingo Walters wrote a book called The Secret Money Market, and an older edition said that the market for pseudonymity or anonymity was over $150 billion a year. People are willing to give up that much money to have it. And it's not all illegal. I mean, obviously you have the people who want to evade things, but you also have husbands and wives who don't want to tell each other their assets in case they're going to get divorced. You have people who want to engage in gambling, or they want to have a steak dinner when they're not supposed to have that, you know, and somebody's going to nag at them. Or you have people who want to procure sex or porn. You have people who want to gamble, etc. And you also have, let's say, the cruise lines. The cruise lines, you have this cruise line based out of that's based out of Florida, but the ships are registered in the Bahamas and in Liberia and in Panama and so on. And you may not want all the passengers to know that they're on a Liberian or a Panamanian ship, so you use this pseudonymity for corporations. In fact, basically, corporations are living people who have lots and lots of pseudonyms. We're just so used to corporations having pseudonyms that we don't even think about it. But in fact, that's what brand names and corporate names are, is their pseudonyms. So I think that within this whole world, we have to strike a balance. And what's going to be very interesting is when you can do KYC, know your customer, and AML on the pseudonyms. And then, you know, so you can have your pseudonym as a trusted entity, even if it's not in your own name. And I think that this is a world that crypto is going to own. I just don't see traditional banking being there. And it's just a matter of crypto people doing what they were doing with, let's say, the leader of Malta, and just saying, hey, look, you know, do you want to be the leader in crypto? Crypto's rising faster. You want to create jobs. You want to create, you know, new capital inflows in a world that's starved for dollars and starved for jobs and starved for positive news. Because unless you're, you know, a government that can say we beat COVID, you're looking pretty bad in the press these days. So everybody's looking for a positive story of what they're doing. And in general, as Thomas Friedman has pointed out, there's a $75 trillion thundering herd, he called it, of money. And there's a saying that capital goes where it's invited and stays where it's treated well. Well, that's true of crypto assets as well, which are now back to being worth hundreds of billions of dollars. They'll go where they're invited, and crypto assets will go where crypto people are invited, and they'll stay where crypto people are treated well. And that would includes legal basis for pseudonymity.
If you hear what Alex just referred to, Eric, on the ETP mainnet of Metaverse, there is already an avatar, there is already a large direction into digital identity. How do you see the next steps in that?
Well, we have digital identity on the ETP chain right now, and we are going to release our DNA chain very soon, hopefully next month. And we hopefully will have much secure, put a lot of security on the current digital identity on it. And DNA chain will have a lot of speed, so faster transaction, just enable what we already have. So what we already have is security and tokenization and the digital identity. When we have faster transaction speed, and hopefully we will have a decentralized exchange very soon as on DNA chain. So these things combined together, I think will trigger a lot of new DeFi application. This is what we are actually hoping for.
Yeah, Alex, you also spoke in your reports about, you know, it not being the anti-banking movement, but more of a customer's choice. Like, you know, customers will go where they're treated well. I mean, you see that, for instance, only last month in Portugal, who is fighting, you know, their economic situation by saying, you know, they're going to be very crypto friendly. I think it's a major step in the right direction to enable people to just be there and not having to have all sorts of constructions worldwide, but just, you know, be out in the open, being an exchange, being trading in crypto. I see, if we look at that and you see this whole development, and I refer back to your earlier reports about e-commerce, do you see that these two things, like having that pseudonymity or maybe an avatar or digital identity, which is basically a secure being on a blockchain, influence e-commerce in an even stronger way than it is now? Because if I buy something online now in e-commerce, if I do it, I would say in the regular economy, I still will have to identify myself in the traditional space. You know, do you see a development that this whole movement into trustless transactions will influence e-commerce in an even bigger way than it already has?
Sure. I think that we're going to see quite a lot of new business models emerge around immunity passports for COVID. So I could foresee, for instance, well, I don't know that I can name the country, but there's a country whose central banks recently collapsed, and it was underpinning their national airline. So their national airline is collapsed. And these people are in a place where they have to import a lot of their food. They're mainly based on tourism. And so I can see people who have the immunity passports getting together and making peer-to-peer airline charters, saying the only people who can fly on this are people who have had COVID and have the antibodies, or car rentals that have this. And a lot of people won't necessarily want to disclose their medical records, but they may want to have a pseudonym and say, this pseudonym has been KYC'd and AML'd and has an immunity passport. So it's the credentials that you want. So you have a container which has all of your attributes that can be checked, and then it gives selective permission to reveal certain aspects for certain kinds of vendors which have the access to that field or that record. And I can see that making a whole lot of products, because in general, people who don't feel they can get the virus or aren't contagious are going to want to separate themselves commercially from the people who could get it. Like, for instance, I can see people rearranging around nursing homes and hospitals. And some urgent care facilities will say, we only take people who have the immunity passports, and, you know, et cetera.
If we take that a little step further and look at what I would say a pseudonymity could mean on the internet, we now relate it to COVID because, you know, it's all very active in our minds every single day of our lives right now. But take that a little step further. We do have in some countries like credit registration based upon behavior. We do have all these, I would say, kind of phony reviews on the internet that are pushed by companies to make them look good. People are starting to doubt that more and more because it gets more out in the open.
I just read in the last 24 hours, 6 different people, someone was saying, oh, this got a 5-star review on Amazon, and then getting a bunch of people saying, oh, but those are all bought. I mean, it's right now, you've just put your finger on something that's, as we're buying so many things through one company, Amazon, that company is now coming under unprecedented scrutiny as we look at whether these things are true or not. We're looking and dissecting everything for truth.
If we now look at the developments that we just discussed, Eric, to close the subject off, if we look at that pseudonymity or an avatar or digital identity that basically verifies us as being genuine as to how we appear on the blockchain or the internet, do you see that extending way beyond just transaction? We just discussed immunity, but I could see, like, you know, validity in an opinion, validity in a lot of areas where you could have
peer-to-peer loans.
Yeah, well, Eric, I think it's one of your favorite subjects, peer-to-peer loans, because it's very much around the corner with the current situation. So how do you feel that this is going to develop?
Well, I think, you know, all technology already there, just like Bitcoin. When Satoshi Nakamoto invented Bitcoin, He's actually not inventing anything. All the technology are there, like cryptography and everything. When we talk about digital identity, so the future development, we already have technical solution for that. We have zero knowledge proof, right? So we don't have to expose everything, let's say our true identity to the buyer or seller on Amazon, or say we can prove we are a credible seller without revealing who we did business before, like using a lot of technology. These technology are already there. Just we need to make use of them. So we are at the beginning of digital identity, but later on, by putting these pieces of technology together, we will be able to solve a lot of the question we just mentioned. So yeah, we're going on the right direction. Let's go there.
Let's just go and see what happens in the next couple of weeks. It's exciting times. I want to thank you both for the review on the 4th Lightman report. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Eric Yu. Alex Lightman, writer, futurist. I always like to call you futurist. Eric Yu, visionary, I think, in the blockchain realm. Thank you both, and we'll see each other next week.